The studio lights burned bright, casting a sharp glow on the polished podium where Karoline Leavitt stood, poised and unshaken. The air in the room was thick with tension, a press conference meant for policy discussion now hijacked by something entirely different. Journalists scribbled furiously, camera shutters clicked, and whispers of anticipation rippled through the audience. But all eyes were locked onto one determined reporter, whose aggressive persistence had shifted the event's entire dynamic. This wasn't an ordinary press inquiry. This was a calculated maneuver, a relentless effort to corner Karoline into giving the exact response the media craved. The reporter's voice, sharp and unwavering, echoed through the room, her question repeated, reworded, twisted, each attempt designed to push Karoline into a moment of weakness. The tension built with every interruption, a deliberate provocation, disguised as journalism. Karoline, however, didn't flinch. She had seen this tactic before. She knew this wasn't about getting a clear answer. It was about creating a viral headline, manufacturing a controversy where there was none. The strategy was obvious. The more they pressed, the more they could spin the narrative, turning a moment of strength into a spectacle of misinterpretation. The murmurs in the audience grew louder. Some reporters exchanged glances, sensing that the situation was escalating fast. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every movement, every flicker expression, waiting for Karoline to slip, to hesitate, to react in a way they could exploit. But instead of faltering, she remained steady, her grip on the podium firm, her expression unwavering. And then the reporter took it a step further. She interrupted again, raising her voice, cutting Karoline off mid-sentence, her words laced with an almost theatrical defiance. "So, are you refusing to answer the question?" The challenge was direct, meant to corner her into submission, to create the illusion that she was avoiding the truth. The intensity in the room peaked, journalists leaning forward, their anticipation feeding into the energy of the moment. Karoline inhaled slowly, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. Then, with absolute calm and precision, she adjusted the microphone, straightened her stance, and fixed the reporter with a gaze so piercing it silenced the entire room in an instant. What happened next no one saw coming. Her response didn't just shock the audience. It sent shockwaves through the media world. Stick around to see how it all unfolded. And before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss a moment like this. The moment Karoline Leavitt paused to respond, the reporter pounced, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. This wasn't just a question. It was an attack disguised as journalism, an attempt to control the room and force a reaction that could be spun into a viral soundbite. The air in the press briefing grew thick with anticipation, the tension rising like a pressure cooker about to explode. Karoline had seen this before. The aggressive questioning, the relentless interruptions, the thinly veiled accusations. It was a well-practiced routine designed not to seek truth, but to create controversy. The reporter's voice grew sharper, her tone more forceful, her body language shifting from inquiry to confrontation. She was no longer just asking. She was demanding a response that fit her narrative. The reporters in the room exchanged quick glances, sensing the shift. Some whispered among themselves, predicting how this would unfold, while others subtly adjusted their cameras, eager to capture every detail. This was no longer a press briefing. It was a spectacle. The energy in the room had shifted from professional discourse to an orchestrated ambush, and everyone could feel it. Then came the next escalation. The reporter, emboldened by the lack of immediate pushback, cut Karoline off mid-sentence, her voice rising with artificial outrage. "So you're refusing to answer?" The words were carefully chosen, designed to frame Karoline as evasive, unaccountable, and unwilling to face tough questions. It was a strategic move, a trap laid out with precision, waiting for Karoline to step right into it. She didn't. Instead of reacting, Karoline studied the reporter, her expression unreadable, her posture unwavering. The silence that followed wasn't hesitation. It was calculated. She knew what was happening. If she responded with frustration, they would label her as defensive. If she dismissed a question, they would call her arrogant. The game was obvious, but the reporter wasn't done. She took a step forward, her voice louder, more aggressive, pushing the envelope even further. The public deserves answers. Are you deliberately dodging the question? The challenge echoed through the room, the cameras zooming in, capturing every second. This was it, the moment of manufactured controversy, a headline waiting to be written. The seconds stretched, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. Would Karoline finally lose her composure? Would she react in a way that could be twisted into scandal? Would she give them the dramatic confrontation they so desperately wanted? No. Karoline did something completely unexpected. She didn't just respond. She took control. And what she said next, it left the entire room stunned. The room was silent, but the tension was suffocating. Every journalist, every camera operator, every political observer present felt the weight of the moment. Karoline Leavitt sat at the podium, her posture composed, but her eyes carried a sharp, unwavering intensity. The relentless barrage of questions from the liberal reporter had pushed the limits, attempting to corner her into submission. Yet, instead of flinching, she remained steady, calculating, and ready to strike. The reporter's words had been carefully crafted as a weapon, loaded with implications, designed to pressure Karoline into a response that could be distorted, sensationalized, and used against her. Every journalist in the room knew it. The tension wasn't just about the question itself, but rather what Karoline would do next. And then, with a subtle yet unmistakable shift in demeanor, she counterattacked. A slow tilt of the head, a pause just long enough to make everyone lean in. She wasn't reacting in frustration. She was seizing control. You keep asking the same question, hoping I'll change my answer, she said, her voice smooth and unwavering, laced with quiet authority that sent a chill through the air. But let's flip this for a moment. Let me ask you something instead. The journalist's confidence visibly wavered, just a flicker, but enough for Karoline to notice. And that was all she needed. The cameras zoomed in. Every microphone in the room was locked on her words, the silence amplifying the weight of the moment. Are you here to report the truth? She continued, her tone measured but piercing. Or are you here to manufacture a headline? A ripple of murmurs moved through the press corps. Some journalists exchanged quick glances, while others instinctively shifted in their seats, as if realizing the entire conversation had just flipped on its head. The trap had failed. The ambush had backfired. The reporter opened her mouth to reply, perhaps to recover, perhaps to regain the upper hand. But Karoline wasn't done. She had anticipated every move before it even happened. If this press room was about accountability, she pressed on, voice unwavering, then why is it that real issues are ignored while moments like this are turned into a spectacle? A crackling energy pulsed through the air. It wasn't just a moment. It was a public dismantling of media tactics, broadcast live for the world to see. The reporter tried again, desperate now, grasping at another line of questioning, hoping to force Karoline back onto the defensive. But she had already lost. Karoline leaned forward just slightly, locking eyes with her challenger. A calm, confident smirk hinted at the absolute control she now had over the entire exchange. I'll be happy to answer real questions, she said, letting the words land with precision, whenever you're ready to start asking them. And just like that, the power shifted. The air felt charged, a mixture of shock, admiration, and disbelief filling the space. The cameras had captured everything, ensuring that this wasn't just another press briefing. It was a defining moment. For the reporter, it was a stunning miscalculation. For Karoline, It was another flawless takedown. And for the world watching, it was only the beginning. Before we move forward, don't forget to like this video. It's the best way to support independent stories that challenge the mainstream narrative. Fire. The shockwaves from Karoline Leavitt's unapologetic response weren't just felt in studio. They reverberated nationwide. Social media feeds were flooded with reactions, each clip more viral than the last. People weren't just watching. They were engaged, debating, sharing, and demanding answers. The mainstream media, caught off guard, scrambled to regain control of the narrative. Within hours, major outlets edited and re-uploaded the segment, carefully trimming down the most damning parts, shifting the focus away from what had truly happened. They tried to reshape the story, making it seem like an overreaction on Karoline's part, rather than a clear-cut case of bias and manipulation exposed on live TV. But it wasn't working. The unedited footage was spreading like wildfire, shared by independent journalists, commentators, and everyday citizens who had had enough of selective reporting. The truth was out there, and for once, the mainstream press couldn't bury it fast enough. That's when the backlash against Karoline began in full force. First, there were the hit pieces, articles dissecting her past interviews, twisting old statements, and labeling her as problematic. Then came the social media smears, orchestrated campaigns designed to discredit her, pushing hashtags calling for her removal, accusing her of being too aggressive, too dangerous, or out of control. Within days, things escalated further. Her team's inboxes were suddenly flooded with anonymous threats, cryptic warnings, and unsettling messages suggesting she back off. Networks that once welcomed her insight were now canceling her appearances, giving vague excuses, or simply ignoring her entirely. And then came the final move, an investigation. A random, baseless inquiry into her campaign funds was suddenly announced, despite zero allegations of wrongdoing before. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. It was an intimidation tactic, plain and simple, a warning shot from the establishment. But instead of cowering, Karoline did the exact opposite. She took to social media, held emergency interviews, and rallied her supporters. She named names, called out the obvious oppression, and refused to let fear dictate her next move. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about freedom of speech, accountability, and a system that was terrified of anyone who refused to fall in line. Karoline Leavitt's unyielding stance had done more than just win a debate. It had sparked a movement. What began as a single heated exchange in front of cameras quickly escalated into a national conversation about media integrity, political bias, and the power of standing up for the truth. The aftermath of her fearless confrontation wasn't just a momentary victory. It set a precedent. The media, which had long operated without fear of being challenged, now found itself under intense scrutiny. The public was no longer blindly accepting narratives handed to them. Instead, they were digging deeper, questioning motives, and demanding transparency. Karoline's voice, once dismissed by mainstream networks, only grew louder. She saw a shift happening as more and more people, from everyday citizens to seasoned analysts, began recognizing the flaws in the media's reporting. Independent journalists and alternative platforms rallied behind her, amplifying a message that had been hidden for too long. And Karoline? She didn't stop there. Rather than letting the moment pass, she strategically leveraged it, launching a new initiative aimed at media accountability. Through speeches, online forums, and live events, she worked tirelessly to educate the public on media manipulation, equipping them with the tools to recognize bias, push back against false narratives, and demand honest reporting. She partnered with like-minded organizations, uniting voices that had long been silenced or ignored. But the true impact of her stand wasn't just about one interview or one reporter's reaction. It was about a fundamental shift in public perception. The mainstream media, which had previously dictated public opinion without resistance, now had to answer for its tactics. Networks that had once felt untouchable were suddenly facing backlash. Journalists who had previously operated without consequences were now being called out in real time by an audience that refused to be misled. Karoline's actions became a rallying cry for those who had felt voiceless and powerless against media giants who controlled the narrative. Her decision to fight back instead of back down inspired a wave of individuals to do the same, emboldening others to challenge authority, question misleading headlines, and seek out the truth for themselves. What started as a moment of defiance had evolved into a full-scale awakening. Politicians, commentators, and activists across the political spectrum took notice. The event ignited debates on journalistic ethics, forcing newsrooms to reevaluate their approach. Suddenly, interviews weren't just performances for biased reporting. They were battles of credibility, and anyone pushing an agenda risked being exposed in real time. This wasn't just Karoline's victory. It was a victory for every independent thinker who refused to be manipulated. And just like that, a single moment shook the foundation of media credibility. What started as a routine interview exploded into a defining moment, proving that those willing to stand their ground can rewrite the narrative. But this is only the beginning. Karoline Leavitt's bold response didn't just expose the bias of a single reporter. It sent a clear message to the entire industry. The time when mainstream media controlled a story unchallenged is coming to an end. The public is more aware than ever, and the demand for truth, accountability, and real journalism is louder than ever before. And now the question is, what comes next? Will the media finally adapt, recognizing that the people aren't blindly accepting their narratives anymore? Or will they double down, pushing the same tired tactics that got them exposed in the first place? One thing is certain, this battle is far from over. That's why your voice matters. If you stand for truth and accountability, make sure to smash that like button. It tells the algorithm that real stories deserve to be heard, not just the ones the media wants you to see. And now we want to hear from you. What do you think about this shocking moment? Was Karoline right to call out the media bias? Or do you think the reporter had a valid point? Drop a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. Insert subscribe link. We bring the stories they don't want you to hear, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Turn on notifications so you're always the first to know when the truth drops. This isn't just a conversation. It's a movement, and you are part of it. Until next time, stay informed, stay aware, and never stop questioning the narrative.